Thank you very much, Darylyn. Well, I don't know how much I'm going to be able to have time to talk to you about my background, because that seems like a complete waste of time. So you can, when we've got a little sprint like this. But first, let me say thank you for coming on the webinar. It's my absolute privilege to do anything I can to be of service during this time and into whatever this new future is that we collectively have the mandate basically to recreate and make better than even it was before. So we haven't got a whole lot of time, and I know that you're probably well aware that these webinars, the time just evaporates. So what I was planning to do was just run through 3 quick things as quickly as I can and give you some backup handout material just to focus in on that. If you've worked with me before, and I think a lot of people on here are alum, so this will be refreshers for you. And if you haven't worked with me before, the whole nature of my work is about really hunting for insight, because it's insight that informs our decisions going forward. And for just right now, I'd love it if you would just type into the chat. We're only going to do this for like 30 seconds, so get in there. What would you say are the most important qualities or characteristics of an effective leader? If you measured effectiveness by people choose of their own free will to follow that leader, what are the characteristics you see in leaders that other people choose to follow? Just take 30 seconds, just jot anything in that comes at all. I'm going to see if I can follow the chat roll. Listening and watching, good listener, ethics, authenticity, positive thinker, integrity, listening, empathy, integrity, mindfulness, inspirational, communications. Well, I can stop now because you'll know what. Yeah? Should we just flag it? We know. Keep them coming in, because the chat roll does get preserved as I understand it, does it, Eleanor? So that you can come back and look through. Now, the first thing that I want to toss out there for you to consider is to sit yourself down, not now, but after this webinar, while it's sort of top of mind, and write down, do a bit of brainstorm with yourself and look at, when I'm looking at a leader that I choose with my own discretionary energy, not because I'm frightened not to, not because someone's making me, but choosing to follow something, what is it about that leader that impacts you personally? Because this is different for different people. So if you jot that down and do a bit of a brainstorm with yourself, and then choose in order of importance, so make a hierarchy of your top 4 or 5 qualities or characteristics that you admire in other leaders. And I know that's a slightly different question, but you get the gist of what I'm talking about. Those people other people choose to follow. If you get those in a hierarchy of 1 to 5, where the single most important thing to you might be ethics, it might be that they can listen, it might be that they actually stop and care, it might be that they're inspiring, it might be that they really stand for a higher purpose. Whatever that thing is, that's the place to start putting your attention in terms of developing those things in you. So if integrity is really important when you're looking at a leader outside of yourself, then have a look in the mirror at, are you walking your talk? Do you say what you mean? Do you mean what you say? All of those things. So do you understand what I'm saying? You're looking back to using what you admire in other people to start cultivating those things in you. Now, there are 3 things that I was going to jump at. So that's just the first thing that you can do off the back of this. There's a ton of stuff you can do. I'm imagining that flexibility and flexibility would be your top 3 things to really get masterful around. If you were on the Communicating Through Crisis webinar, you know, we had a little bit of a chat about comfort zones and things. If we want to move out of our comfort zone, even if we don't want to, because let's face it, for a lot of us, we're being shoved out of our comfort zone, becoming more comfortable with the uncertainty. I don't mean that means you need to enjoy it. There is a place where we have to just sit with what is and allow this process to unfold, and not just, it's by way of caution, I guess, not to take a snapshot of where anything is at any particular time when it's in a process. That would be like playing a movie and then stopping it on a freeze frame and saying, well, that's the whole movie, when really there is more to go and more to go. We'll have responses, we'll have emotional responses, we'll have mental responses, we'll have physical responses to the things that we are having to navigate. But Edward Gibbons said, the wind and the waves are always on the side of the most able navigators. So all of the Icehouse webinars that you're being delivered are intended to support you in navigating this crisis. We can't change the storm, but we can empower ourselves with great navigation skills. So the first tip, or the first little distinction I want to make, and I'm going to go to the old flip chart here. This will be a refresher for some of you. I'm just going to really speed date it. But 20th century leadership, historically, and I'm going to be really generalizing, so you just feel into where this might feel appropriate for you or not. But 20th century leadership was all about the boss is, the leader is the boss. The leader is the controller. Sometimes a dictator. And sometimes, now is that showing the right way around for you still, Eleanor? Because it's back, I'm looking at it backwards again. Yeah. Sometimes we have to operate like a parent. And I'm sure that during this time, you have recognized that part of your responsibility as a leader is to have that, the pastoral care of your team as a priority concern. Because resilience, and I know there's been a lot of webinars here on resilience, it's all about relationship. And primarily for us as leaders, our relationship with ourselves is really mission critical to keep that healthy. And that means nurturing yourself, supporting yourself. You and I both know I'm a leader in my own business, so are you in your business. And it can be a bloody lonely place to be, especially in a time of crisis. So connecting with other leaders, finding out from each other, how you're managing this. No one's got a blueprint for this. There's no magic formula, which is why I want to focus in on principles rather than rules or do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that. You've got enough nous to know what's right and what's not right in your particular context. But just to finish this little tiny bit, there are employees, there are people in your team who actually like this kind of leadership, especially in a crisis, because what they need is the reassurance that you know what's going on, you are making decisions based on the best information you can get. And remember, your teams can get information, pretty much the same information that you can get. So if they're putting it together in their brain and coming up with ideas and you're not, this is one of the things where we need to be open to the 21st century leadership kind of context. And I'm not saying that we can't have this because this is a time of crisis and we have to have this. It's just, this is where we can stand in our authority and we can say, we're doing this, you know, we've discussed it, we've taken all the information, I'm making a call, I'll be responsible for the call. And that, I think Ashley Bloomfield even said it, leadership is a collective call to action. So communication is going to be important, isn't it? I'll get to that when we look at the emotional intelligence, the emotional competencies that we need. But a 21st century leader, Hal, if you're on right now, you're asking, you know, like, what are the skills that I can cultivate now to make sure that I'm being effective as a leader? And this is where the 21st century leadership kind of idea is an evolution of this, because young, intelligent, talented people, they don't kind of respond so much to this kind of leadership these days. This is the, you do what I say because I said you have to do it. And what we need these days is make me want to, influence me so that I want to cooperate. And this is about you as communicator and knowing where you stand and all the rest of it. And having a good idea to galvanize people around. So 21st century leadership, the new skills that we need are the skills of the coach. And I know if you are an Ice House alum, if you're new to the Ice House, get your butt enrolled on a program where you can start to really see the benefit of taking a coach approach to your leadership. Facilitation skills go with it. 2 completely new skill sets to what traditionally leadership has focused on. And these 2 skill sets, if you were to ask me for both, what would be within that? What actual skill can I really focus on to get me some traction going forward? There are 2 of them. There's a couple more to this, but we just haven't got time to go into it in a whole lot of detail. But these in particular, I would say to you, the first skill I would be absolutely mastering is listening. Listening, not just for the content that someone's saying to you. I had a business owner ask about, I've got someone in my team, this is the other day, I've got someone in my team who's refusing to come back to work because they're saying, you've been given 12 weeks of subsidy for me. So basically the mindset was, that's 12 weeks paid leave. So I don't have to work because you've already been paid for me. Now, is that all that's going on? If you just listen to the words, that could trigger in you as a leader an activation of, that is very annoying, that is very frustrating. Maybe though, there is a deeper conversation to be had because people's fear shows up in weird ways sometimes. So we have to be able to listen for more than just the words someone is saying. Yes, we listen for the content. Yes, what is someone saying? We listen for that. But if we're not tuned into the feeling of the communication, we are not going to pick up on the meaning of the communication. You know, if you said to someone in your team, are you ready to come back to work yet? Because it's safe, we're all good. And they said, yeah, nah. You could hear no, or you could hear, oh, there's a little bit of doubt in there. Let me explore that more with the other skill that I would encourage you to master, which is asking great questions. See, a person will unfold in front of you if they feel what? Safe. And if they don't feel, and I'm talking psychologically safe, let alone virus safe, I'm talking emotionally and mentally safe, spiritually safe. You ask a question, you're showing who you are in every move you make, and everyone's watching how you are. You know, a lot of people have talked about how crisis shows up character. Well, of course it does, because how we respond in a crisis goes to our kind of default settings, and some of us rise to the occasion. You might have seen staff members, team members in your organization during this crisis, and you're kind of like, whoa, there's someone who's just risen into personal leadership and they're good to have around in a crisis. You might find you've got other team members who are, oh, would have thought that you might have stepped up in this situation, and they withdraw. So if you think about, and this is just 2 quickies, if you think about listening as a skill set and questioning as a skill set, there are about 4 types of questions that every question will fit into. You know, you've got open questions, you've got closed questions, you've got leading questions, you've got rhetorical questions. Most questions will fit into there somewhere or other. But if you could just think this, a question in the brain operates like a fish hook. So if you bait that question really well, then you're going to get a much better response than if you just float, you know, how are you doing? There's an open question, wide open. And socially, we will tend to say, yeah, I'm fine. How are you? It's a social icebreaker. How are you doing with your own self-management through this crisis? Is a leading question that it creates context for that person to respond to you. And you being a safe pair of ears for your people at this time, get to know them, ask them lots of questions. I really, really encourage you to, because that is where you can actually see what's going on and either address that yourself or find someone in your team who's best equipped to, and that might be external or it might be internal, to support that person or that team. So this idea here of 20th century leadership, it's like, yeah, it might work in some cases, but it may not necessarily encourage the person to put their heart into whatever it is they're doing. If they're feeling like they matter, if they're feeling like they're cared about, they're not just another disposable, you know, in, out, number, something like that. I don't think anyone on this call would be a leader like that anyway. Your business wouldn't probably last very long. But those two skills, I would really, 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 really encourage you to keep practicing. So I just want to take a pause there. Just write in the chat, is there anything specific you want to ask about these? Or this? Does it make sense? Are we making sense so far? Just quickly in the chat, just a yes, no, or you're going too fast? What do you got? Yes, 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 yes. Great, great. All good. Right. That's enough for me to carry on. I don't need much. Now, if we want to look at some principles, I'm going to share my screen. We'll give this a crack. And basically, you've got this handout, but I'm just going to run through these principles and have a little chat about them. There's nothing fancy here. It's literally a list. And in terms of application, if I can encourage you, once I share my screen, I'll just run through them very quickly. If we're on a hunt for insight, see if there's any of these principles where you can say, you know what, I am so good at that. My muscle is around that. If there's a principle that's kind of like, oh, that's where maybe I could do a bit more around that one, let yourself just highlight that, because if we can do anything in this tiny little window of time, it would be to provoke an insight. Awareness is a human superpower. So the more that you can keep noticing what you notice about what's going on, all well and good. So I'm just going to share my screen and see if this will work. What have we got coming down here? We'll be answering your question. Oh, yeah, that's your one. Yeah. All right, good. Let's see here. How are we going? Can you see that? You guys on the panel can see that? Okay, so in terms of principles, and once again, you know, sorry to call you out, Hal, but you were asking about these. So, you know, ask and you shall receive. This first one here, the medium is the message. Essentially what that's about is we are our message. You know, I'm sitting here today and it might look like I have a message for you. Yeah, I have, but basically I am my message. So all my 30 plus years of experience in this domain, another 7 or so years in my 20s in the COPs, my early childhood and my rough adolescence, all the rest of it, all put together make up this human being called me. Now, if the medium had a message, and we're not talking about psychic mediums here, if the medium had a message, it would be like me saying, here's my message, I'm going to give it to you. That's not how it works. Real communication is a flow of energy, and you better believe it. Your people see how you treat other people, they experience how you treat them, and the more that you can be the leader you really want to be, and that's why I was encouraging you to amplify those things that you admire in others, because they're in you. If you can see them in other people, you've got the seed of that in yourself. So I really, really encourage you to walk your talk, make sure that you're meaning what you say and saying what you mean. The measure of your success is the result you get. And the third one there, there's only your way, no right or wrong. Now, those two go together in tandem. Excuse me. That there's only your way, no right or wrong. If you think about it, you have your way of doing things. You have a leadership style. And if your leadership style is getting you the results you want consistently, I'm here to say, hallelujah, keep doing what you're doing. And the principle that dovetails with that is that the measure of your success is in the results you get. Now, I work with a lot of leaders who don't like the results they're getting, and guess where they look? Outside of themselves. Whose fault was it? Who's to blame? We've got a world leader, several actually, on the world stage demonstrating how it's my way or the highway, and yet the results don't work. And if the results don't work, others are getting the blame. This is not how these principles work. So you can probably imagine what I'm going to say, which is that if you're not getting the results you want, rather than looking outside of yourself, start looking at your way. And that's the developmental aspect. What do I need to be bringing forward or making corrections around in my own leadership practice that's going to end up with me getting a better result? Now, this is where flexibility, flexibility, flexibility. Wear it on your forehead. I am a learner. I'm still coachable. No one knows everything. I don't know what would be the resonant thing for you, but if you could put your hand up and say, you know what? I'm still a learner. You are modeling to your entire team that it's okay to learn, that it's okay to drop what we were doing and do it this way, or pivot in some way that we now have different products for sale, or we've added some kind of enhancement that came out of crisis. Crisis drives evolution. It's nature's way of pushing things on. Egos resist. And as one of my teachers once said to me, it's not growing that hurts. It's the resistance to growth that hurts. It's when we're fighting it, going, I don't want that to be the truth. And that goes for all sorts of different things in our lives. So that the measure of your success is in the results you get, and there's only your way. Those two hand in glove. Everyone is doing the best they can with the resources they have is a principle I've been working with for, I don't know, 35, 40 years, just about. It's one of those ones we all know everyone's doing their best. And oftentimes it has on the end of it, and your best's not good enough. I know you're doing your best, but it's not good enough. You have to, If people don't have the resources, they might be internal resources, they might be external resources. My work is about the internal resources. If they don't have resources you think they should have, judging them for that is not helpful. Discovering what is the need and then supporting with the resource, that is much more helpful. If I'm too shy to speak up to a customer and I'm your representative out there on the road and I can't look them in the eye, then you might tell me off for not looking my customer in the eye because a customer's complained. But what say you asked me about that and I realised that I wasn't very confident, and you actually helped me to build my confidence so that I could look our customers in the eye. Yeah, pretty simple. Everyone's doing the best they can with the resources they have. If you want someone's best to be better, add more resource, and that will happen quite spontaneously. And just have a look at that word, everyone. That includes you. A lot of leaders I work with, beat yourself up for not being good enough at this or not being that. Cut yourself some slack. You're doing the best that you can in extraordinary circumstances. So I go, bloody good on you. Whatever way you are navigating this, you are doing the best that you can. And even being on this webinar, you're clearly open to gathering more resource so it can help you do a better job. And that's a champion kind of attitude. And that's the attitude that will get us through this and into a really robust recovery. Focus on what works. That won't be new to you. If you think about the life attention, whatever we pay attention to, that is where our life energy follows. So if we're paying attention to all the things that are wrong, all the handbrakes, all the stuff that's holding us back, all the constraints, then we're kind of feeding that. Whereas if we're looking at what's working and what could work even better, then we give energy to that, we give life to that, and we actually grow that. So pretty straightforward stuff. I know I'm not telling you, I'm preaching to the choir here. I absolutely know it. Acknowledge every effort. Now, a lot of us can be a bit spiritually stingy with acknowledging other people, maybe because we don't get acknowledgement. You know, a lot of leaders, it's thankless. And if people are trying to pat you on the head and say what a marvelous job you're doing, you might get suspicious and think, what do you want? You know? Sometimes we can get a little bit cynical. Sometimes we can say, well, I don't need anyone to acknowledge me, so I don't think anyone else deserves it either. I can tell you right now, little deposits in the emotional bank account of others, genuine, authentic acknowledgement of something that's working. Once again, your life energy is going towards that, and so is the other person's. You know, foster that which you want more of. And right now, we need more goodwill. Well, keep going with the goodwill, because we've got a good healthy dose of it in the country at the moment. We're operating largely as a team, whether you think it's right or wrong, the way the decisions are going, we're all in it. And so we make the most of it and acknowledge the efforts of the people around you. And I'm not talking about bullshit acknowledgement, making sure I say, oh, good on you every day, because people can feel the inauthenticity if that's not coming from a genuine place. But make no mistake, your acknowledgement to people in your team maybe means more to those people than it does to you. And it's too easy and it costs nothing. Respect everyone and everything. I'm always on about this. If there was any principle of operation that would lift the standards, lift the game, help to make that dynamic of make me want to, you know, treat me with respect, and you will get a more cooperative Amanda for sure. And this goes to our environment. It goes to that which supports us. If we don't, we don't even need to like someone to be able to respect them. Respect is not something, from my point of view, that we give away. We command or demand. It's something we give away, and we might be giving it back. We might not. Our challenge is, even when we're disrespected, to maintain respect, because that says a whole lot about you. Other people behave, that says a whole lot about them. Your response to those people says everything about you. So it's just a very quick speed date with those little principles. And I see that we're heading for almost time. See how it evaporates? It's crazy, eh? If you've got any questions around any of these, I'm happy to answer them after as well. And if you want calls, you can hook up with Darylyn too if you need any coaching calls around all of this. So like a bull at a gate, I'm just going to go into the last thing. And if you've worked with me, you will know this. If you have not worked with me before, this will be new to you. So just take a moment. I'm just going to show you a piece of content and invite you to have a read of it and notice what it's like to read. Just notice what it's like to read. That's all there is to do. So here we go. Just take a moment. Okay, in the interest of time, hopefully you've been able to have a quick look at that. And if we were in a live workshop setting, we'd have a good little chat about what you think of that. But I'm going to take a big fat punt and say that it says read it only once. It might be tempting to reread. It might be kind of confusing. It might be, ugh. And that's what it's supposed to be like. You've just read some information that's gone in through your eyes into your brain, and your brain, amongst other things, your mind is a meaning-making device. The power of reason to make meaning of things is a human superpower. So is awareness, so are some others, but we won't get into that now. Now, what happens when we take information in is that we try and make meaning of it. And in the absence of being told what the meaning is, we make stuff up. We just make it up. Now, we might be making up the accurate thing, that what it's supposed to be about, but we might not. And we might go off half-cocked and go and do something based on, well, that's what I thought it meant. Now, I'm going to give you one more piece of information, and I'll ask you to have another quick look. That piece that you're looking at now is about washing clothes. Have a quick skim. You won't even have to read it right through. It's about washing clothes. Now, can you see that even without having to read it right through to the end, do you notice oh, yeah, well, of course, it's about that. Now, on the first read through, when I ask people in a workshop setting, what did you make up that it was about? A lot of people will go, total waste of time. You know, there's no context. And the key point that I want to point out here, and we talked a little bit about this in the crisis communication one, is around framing. You can deliver your communication in a way that helps people make meaning that you want them to make, or you can do the equivalent of what I've just done. Give people information that they're just going to make up whatever they make up. Because in the absence of context, we will create our own. That's part of what the psychological infrastructure called ego will do. Some people make up it's about something else entirely. Now, in the there's a resource website that I set up, just a web page that I set up with some resources on it. And I will add to that after today, because I'm going to wrap up now. I'm going to add to that after today with some more resources on that page. Eleanor will make sure that you've got a link to that page. It's going to build on the Communicating in Crisis webinar, which is now completely out of date because we're in a whole nother place. But there is a resource there on listening, and there's a couple of other things there as well. And I will add maybe a little emotional intelligence kind of reflection so that you can do some little self-reflecting and see where your strengths are and maybe where your stretchy bits are. But to be a leader worth following, I just want to encourage you to stay in relationship and genuinely want to know how are your team doing individually, collectively. I'm sure you're doing all of this stuff anyway.